Main Street, McDade in 1876. Signs dot the street in front of the buildings representing businesses. At one end, Nash's Rockfront Saloon. On the other end, George Milton's store. In between, Koppel Brothers, John Kennedy's office, and the Ilo Saloon. On Waco Street near the Billings Memorial, a sign reads Olive Ranch, Lawrence Chapel. Other signs with arrows point towards the knobs. Our story begins in the year after the Civil War, when McDade changed from a place of quiet farms and ranches into a railroad boomtown. The making of the railroad brought workers, along with gamblers, prostitutes, murderers, and thieves, intent on taking their money. The Yayo Knobs, those wooded hills north of McDade, had hidden draft dodgers during the war. A few cattle were stolen, a few here and there, but the railroad had to feed the hungry workers, and suddenly the small thieves around McDade exploded into large-scale rustling and murder. Vicious gangs roamed the knobs, but the biggest and worst gang became known as the Notch Cutters, cutting notches into their gun handles for every man they killed, and there were many. Good men turned to the law to put a stop to the crime, but innocent men set to testify against the Notch Cutters would be ruthlessly ambushed and shot in the back. Jurors were intimidated, their families threatened. People began to fight back, forming vigilante groups. And at a dance in Blue Branch, 4 men were called out at gunpoint and hung on a limb while the frightened dancers were ordered not to come out until daylight. Still, the crime continued, and one gritty rancher was bent on stopping the grand-scale theft of his horses and cattle. When word comes to Print Olive that Notch Cutter leaders are gathering in the Rockfront Saloon, his brothers advise him to kill them. But Print, no stranger to violence, is already in trouble in Williamson County. Instead, he is determined to lay down the Olive version of the law.
I know you've been stealing from ranchers and farmers around here. Now listen, you bunch of dog-meat-eating trash. If I catch anything riding an olive-branded horse or herding an olive-branded cow, I'll kill that man right on the spot. Don't even think about it. You'll be a dead man. Now remember what it said.
Fish gotta swim, birds gotta fly. I gotta love one man till I die. Can't help loving that man of mine. Tell me he's lazy, tell me he's cold, tell me I'm crazy, maybe I know. Can't help loving that man of mine. When he goes away, that's a rainy day, but when he comes back, the day is fine, the sun will shine. He can come home as late as can be, home without him, and no home for me. Please help loving that man of mine.
Olive was true to his word. 2 rustlers were found dead, wrapped in a green cowhide with the Olive brand shown so all the world could see. In retaliation, 15 men attacked the Olive Ranch, setting it on fire and killing 2 men. One of them was Print's brother. Good citizens were outraged by the intimidation and violence, and the law was impotent to put an end to it. The reign of terror in McDade seemed unstoppable. Men were afraid to talk about the secret groups of vigilantes or even the Notch Cutters. To have loose lips in McDade meant death. In the fall of 1883, things began to come to a head. Businessman and farmer Allen Wynn is riding home after selling his cotton in Bastrop. A shot rings out. Alan Wynn slumps over and his hat falls off. Blood runs down his head. 3 men, Henry, Thad, and Wright, rush to him and rob him, taking a fat wallet from his coat. The bullet has creased his head, temporarily knocking him unconscious. Wynn comes to, recognizing his attackers, but he plays possum to escape a certain death. Wynn consults with his business partners, Tom Bishop and George Milton. Knowing his life isn't worth a plug nickel, if he speaks out, they advise him to stay quiet about what has just happened. While Alan Wynn pretends to know nothing about his attackers, the vicious murder of 2 store clerks in the nearby community of Fedor sends McDade folks reeling. And Lee County Deputy Sheriff Isaac Huffington is determined to find the killer. Huffington is no stranger to violence. When he was a boy, his father was massacred in an Indian attack. He is known as a relentless, dangerous bloodhound once he is on the trail of the criminal. Huffington enters McDade on a pitch-black night, searching for the killers. His wife Clorinda hides in the dark near their cabin, sitting on a tree stump with a shotgun to protect their children while he is gone. Huffington tries to make it home to the Blue Branch, but he only gets as far as George Milton's house, where he dies a few days later. When Clorinda must take her children and go to her husband, she cries in the wagon the entire way.
An old cowboy went riding out one dark and windy day. Up on a ridge he rested as he went along his way, when all at once a mighty herd of red-eyed cows he saw, plowing through the ragged skies and up the cloudy draw. Their brands were still on fire and their hooves were made of steel. Their horns were black and shiny, and their hot breath he could feel. A bolt of fear went through him as he thundered through the sky, for he saw the riders coming hard, and he heard their mournful cry. Yippee-yi-yay, yippee-yi-oh. Ghost riders in the sky, yippee-yi-yay, yippee-yi-oh. The ghost riders in the sky, the ghost riders in the sky. Those ghost riders in the sky.
The good people of McDade are enraged over Huffington's murder and the inability of law enforcement to do anything about it. While the Lee County Sheriff guards the door of their meeting, the Vigilantes make their plans. On Christmas Eve, when the men who robbed Alan Wynn and left him for dead come into the Rockfront Saloon, their plan is set into motion. But the men they seek are in the Rockfront Saloon, and all the roads leading into McDade are closed off. People can come in, but no one may leave.
Hang down your head, Henry Pfeiffer. Hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Henry Pfeiffer. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Accused of rustling in Blue Branch, the charge made me a horse thief in a McDade saloon with no chance. I hope this mob ain't coming for me. Yeah. Hang down your head, Henry Pfeiffer. Hang down your head and cry. Yeah. Hang
men taken from the Rockfront Saloon on Christmas Eve are left hanging on a tree about a mile north of town. But on Christmas morning, it's business as usual in McDade. Buck Billingham works in his store, waiting for last-minute shoppers. In the Rockfront Saloon, the Nash brothers, Oscar and Horace, serving eggnog spiked with whiskey. George Milton sits outside his store while his business partner, Tom Bishop, sits with Dr. Vermillion on the nearby bench. The quiet Christmas morning is about to shatter. 6 notch cutters, relatives of the hung men, brothers Az, Haywood, and Jack, along with their friends Bert, Charlie, and Bob, leave their home to come and participate of the Nash brothers' annual Christmas eggnog, not knowing what has happened in McDade the night before. The 6 men are in a fury to publicly rail against the Vigilantes would be courting suicide. Their rage cannot be contained, however, and they lash out against George Milton and Tom Bishop by defending Haywood. Instead of inspiring Christmas cheer, the whiskey fans the flames of anger in the notch cutters. The notch cutters make their plan. They will pretend everything is normal and nothing happened the night before. Bob will go back to Billings' store to exchange the boots he bought to town as planned. Haywood and Charlie will buy extra bullets for their guns in Milton's store. Jack has a $35 credit there, and he'll use that as a pretext to come inside and keep Milton occupied. But Az attacks Bishop, Haywood, and Charlie, and Bert will be on hand at the door. The odds, 6-2, stacked in the notch cutters' favor. But the notch cutters have made a deadly mistake in underestimating the courage and the tenacity of their victims.
Thanks for coming in here trying to tell me what to do. You rotten scum. Stop that. Bill! Don't come out here or I'll kill you!
And so, our story ends. The reign of terror invoked by the notch cutters had ended, and peace has come to McDade on a Christmas day.